You know, he doesn't exactly look like your governor. If anything, it looks the other way around. What's the story?
The story of how me and the Gov fell in together is an epic tale, full of laughter, thrills, and tears.
Hi everybody! Today we're here for a special video talking about one of our favorite things. And that thing is Dragon Quest. I would have loved to have finished both Dragon Quest VII and Dragon Quest VIII right now, but I've just been so busy. I haven't gotten as far into Dragon Quest VIII as I would have liked, but even in my limited time with Dragon Quest VIII, there are a bunch of things that are new to this 3DS version of the game that I wanted to talk about, get your thoughts on, and also just talk about why Dragon Quest VIII is worth paying attention to. There's so many games out right now, but Dragon Quest VIII is so good, and I think it stands the test of time.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's Dragon Quest in a nutshell. Like, it's a game that stands the test of time. And in a weird way, too. Like, I remember when I first played Dragon Quest VIII, it was like, they're using NES sound effects still in here? What are they doing?
Never get rid of those.
Yeah.
I love those sound effects.
But there's this weird thing about Dragon Quest where, like, on paper, like, that doesn't feel like it should work. Like, having a simple turn-based system and the way that, you know, you get items and everything like that, like it's very much just built on top of that old structure, and like even like reusing a lot of the music and stuff, it just feels in a way like you could say they're rehashing it, but it works. It's like magic every time.
It is.
They know how to do it.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that you bring up, because I think part of what makes Dragon Quest work is, and I don't think they're given enough credit for it, how structurally different so many of the games are. You know, where how you're going through the game and how the story is presented to you changes so much. And, you know, obviously Final Fantasy has different worlds, different characters, but a lot of the times, you know, how those games flow, there's comparisons there, but you think about like Dragon Quest VII, where you're going to all of these different islands and going back into time and going into the future, and how there's a lot of freedom to explore. You think about Dragon Quest V, where you play, you know, the entire life of a character. You know, you go through generations.
Yeah. Well, and 4 is one of my favorites because it's like you play all of these different stories, and then everyone gets together for the kind of the big quest.
Culmination.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in that sense, Dragon Quest VIII, I think, is a lot more traditional. There's not really that same gimmick that there is in some of the other ones, but it works because of how well it's utilized. Having played through the first few hours of the game again, that game starts out so strong. You're introduced to these very likable characters. You get to the town, you see what's going on with the king and his daughter and how the townspeople treat them, and then you're immediately thrown into the world. You can go explore, you can go into this dungeon. There's just an immediacy to it. You get skills right away. The immediacy that's not present in other games. You know, I like Dragon Quest VII, I love it, but it takes a very long time to really get going.
For me with 8, it's the like revenge quest.
Yeah.
You know? You're going for Domegas, and each party member has their different motivations. And I think that driving force is what keeps me so invested for so long in that game. And then it's just like who you meet along the way, obviously, and everything else is so strong. But it's that driving force of trying to cure the king and the princess, and then, you know, again, meeting other people along the way. Jessica wants, you know, revenge. Angela wants revenge. So
I think 8 also,
so
like, it's such a strong realization of that art style, which I don't think that when 7 originally came out, like, it accomplished. Like, there was just something about the look of it, like, even the cover art, I was like, I'm not really into that. Whereas, like, 8 is a very pretty game, and it's kind of like Wind Waker, and that because of its style, like, it just holds up. How does that work to the 3DS? Like, because I know that, like, you've got to down-res it and everything.
Yeah, so I was really worried about that. I mean, one of the things that immediately springs to mind when thinking about the PS2 version of Dragon Quest VIII is how it looks, exactly as you said. I would say it's not nearly as compromised as I thought, and looks fantastic. It, like, so much that I didn't feel like I was playing a greatly inferior looking game. The one thing I did a side-by-side comparison, so I played a bunch of Dragon Quest VIII on 3DS and then I played on PS2, is the colors are a lot more saturated in the 3DS version. So a lot deeper bolder colors, whereas when you play the PS2 version, a lot brighter, a lot fainter. And I don't know necessarily which one I prefer, but it is definitely pretty noticeable putting them side by side. One thing as I was playing the PS2 version that I was like, this is really hard to adjust to, is the quality of life improvements that they've made to the 3DS version. And they're so substantial that I think if you have already played through Dragon Quest VIII and you kind of want to do a replay, but you're like, this game is 80 hours long and you feel a little bit hesitant, they've done so many things in this game to just make it better, make it faster, make it more convenient. So
I'm really against this, Ben.
what are
Really
you against? I don't know.
What the one you're about to tell me. Quick saving.
You're against quick saving.
I'm against it for Dragon Quest VIII. Big time.
I think you have to have some form of quick saving on a portable, though. That's a concession that has to be made.
Because Dragon Quest VIII, like, the penalty for death is steep. You lose half your gold.
Yeah,
right.
I actually don't think that's that steep.
I love Dragon Quest VIII.
Because you can bank.
Yeah, you
right?
can bank.
You can bank it all, but I still feel like when you go out on a quest in Dragon Quest VIII, you know, you're gearing up, you're in town, you're getting ready, and then you go out to a dungeon and you're working through that dungeon. The stakes are high. You know, some of those dungeons, especially later, are longer, and I just feel like the ability to, you know, quick save after a couple kills or like progress in and quick save kind of takes away that like journey vibe of, not journey of the game, but like the mission vibe of like going out there, working all night on a dungeon and like getting through it, and then maybe going back to town and like recouping and staying at an inn. I just feel like the quick save kind of like detaches me from that feeling.
I really disagree with that because that preparation that you're talking about is still very much present, where, you know, in typical Dragon Quest style, if you're not going out of your way to grind and kill enemies, like, items are really expensive. And so you have to have sort of those preparation moments where you're going out and procuring those items and slowly building your characters up and then going to the dungeon. I mean, the only thing that's different is you don't have to go back to a town just to explicitly save, which I don't really think loses all that much, because you still do have to go back to a town and visit a church if you need to res, or or if you need to, you know, like remove a curse, for example. You can't do that in an inn. And so I think like towns and that whole process still feel very much intact. It's just, if you couldn't, and you can't quick save anywhere in Dragon Quest VII. You can quick save, but you can't do it in a town. You can't do it in a dungeon. And it makes it so I can't really play Dragon Quest VII on 3DS unless I have like a lot of time to devote to it. Whereas now, you know, I could be like on a plane or something and not have to worry like, okay, I've got to, like, it's, I think that flexibility just makes it a more enjoyable portable game to me.
With the quick save specifically though, like, is it the kind where it like makes you end the game right when you quick save?
So in Dragon Quest VII, in addition to not being able to quick save anywhere, when you quick save in Dragon Quest VII, it ends the game. You don't get to continue. In Dragon Quest VIII, you can quick save and then continue the game.
Okay.
So yeah, it's much more flexible. I appreciate where you're coming from. It just made it a more enjoyable experience.
That like process is always what I love so much about it. It's like anytime I'm gearing up a town and getting ready to go somewhere, it's like I'm committing time and resources to this.
I'll say this: I had the same fear as you did, and then I actually played it, and I didn't really feel like that much was lost. Cool.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't think about having to go back to town to res. And that, so that the fact that is still needed is.
There are also other changes that I would argue make it easier, so I want to get your thoughts on this as well. To me, this is just huge. This is the biggest change in the entire re-release for me, is there are no random battles anymore. You can see enemies on the map. And that's, it just, again, it adds this flexibility to Dragon Quest VIII that wasn't there before, because there are times where you want to grind and you want to fight a lot, and then there are times where it's like, no, I really just need to get to this next thing. Like, these enemies are, like, these random encounters are just getting in the way and taking more time than I need. Like, they're not a challenge, they're not hard, they're just wasting my time. And so being able to have more control over what you're fighting when is,
Yeah. Just playing 7.
Yeah.
I noticed that too, of like, okay, I found my item, now I need to travel a really long way to like go deliver it, and just being able to dodge the enemies was nice. So I'm totally cool with being able to see the monsters.
I don't know that. That's weird to go back to a game and do that, because there's that sort of sense of like panic that can set in when you're real close to town, but
exactly too.
You need something.
I'm with blood on that.
Here's my counter argument. Here's my counter argument to that. Okay, because I think on paper you're like, oh, that removes some of the tension.
Mm-hmm.
In the overworld map, yes, totally 100%. But in both Dragon Quest VII and in Dragon Quest VIII, the way dungeons are designed, there are a lot of areas where it's like, I really can't navigate around them. Mm-hmm. And so you get to these multi-floor dungeons where it's really hard to dodge enemies, and that kind of tension is still present in those areas specifically.
But there's also, too, like, when it's random, you don't know what enemy's going to show up. Sure, the dungeons have, like, a lot of the same enemies.
Yeah.
But there's something about, like, seeing the enemy and then, like, it kind of spoiling the surprise. Like what I was saying, when that happens, it's like, oh my god. Sometimes it's like, all of a sudden it's like 4 or 5 mud hands and, like, another, like, really intense guy, and it's like, uh-oh.
Yeah,
so that kind of suspense.
Kind of, but the vast majority of the time, you're fighting things that you've seen a bunch.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I know we over-reference this series, but it's kind of a Dark Souls thing where, like, how in Dark Souls, you'll see an enemy, and just its sheer size or how it looks is intimidating. And so sometimes, to me, that creates a different level of tension or excitement or whatever when I see an enemy in the distance and know that I have to take it on. When I'm approaching it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It definitely helps with, like, delivering stuff, though. Like you were saying, like, dude, I just need to get this.
Right.
And in the moments when it's like, all right, I have full health, full mana, and I'm in a level 1 zone and I'm level 20, but I gotta, like, deliver this anyway. Right. It's like, all right, let me just dodge past all these guys.
Exactly. There are just so many times in these games and in many other JRPGs where it's like, I just need to very quickly deliver this thing so I can get to the next meaty part of the game. And yeah, it just eliminates tedium. This one I also really like, but I can see a counter argument for. There's an option to speed up battles. So you can do the normal animation speed, or it goes much, much, much faster. And, because you can turn it off during every fight.
Speed, or is it like a button?
It's not like a fast forward button like some other games have. It is when you fighting an enemy, at the end it's speed, and you can switch it to either normal or fast before you go into fight or tactics or any of your other options. And so it's great for grinding, where you are just a lot of times auto-attacking through enemies, and it just makes that process quicker. But then when you get to a boss or something you want to save a little bit more, you just toggle it. It's off. So I like that it's to your own discretion and that you can create your own experience for it, where you can't really with the random encounter.
It hurts my soul. Ben, it really does.
Yeah.
But play how you want to play. Absolutely. Yeah. The fact that it's there.
Right. It's an option.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, they do have some long animations in 8.
Yeah, and especially in 8 because of how they do the camera angles and the presentation of the combat. It's
so hard for me, man, because, like, Dragon Quest VIII is my favorite JRPG. It is, to me, flawless, and I wouldn't change one thing.
Yeah.
But bringing it to a new platform, new players, like, I'm cool with it.
I get where you're coming from. It is a game that means so much to you, and so there's that hesitation, there's that apprehension. I think that makes a lot of sense. The thing is, though, again, I wouldn't call Dragon Quest VIII a hard game, but it is a game where you have to think. You have to be prepared. Yeah. You have to pay attention to what you're getting yourself into, and that's still very much present here.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like the strategy was gone, or, like I couldn't just go into the first dungeon without having healing items or having, like, slightly better equipment or getting a few levels.
Because, like, that's what I love about it, too, is, like, even in the world map, just a simple random encounter in Dragon Quest VIII, things can go horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Just a basic battle.
Yeah.
And I love just having to think strategy on every little thing. Like, there are rare moments when you're just auto-attacking through everyone.
Right.
Like, sure, there are times in the game, but in the grand scheme of, the 60, 70, 80 hours, there's not a lot of those moments.
Even just getting outside of the first town, there are enemies that, like, after a couple hits, I'm like, oh man, I'm almost out of life. It doesn't... I wouldn't say it throws you into this hellish fire, but it's also not something that you can snooze through even within the first hour of the game.
Yeah.
which I appreciate. But there are a bunch more changes that I want to talk about. Just some little quality of life things that I want to go over.
Quality of life. I love those.
Yeah, it's an MMO. It's an MMO thing.
Okay.
That it's just an MMO thing where
Quality of life. You can have more bags now.
Yeah, reading patch notes is like, all right, so here are the quality of life improvements for this major patch. Yeah,
Your
sorry.
bags at level 10 now instead of 20.
It's just a holdover from that. So the second screen is great in Dragon Quest VIII. Two of a few of the basic things that it does are when you in the PS2 version of Dragon Quest VIII, you had to pull out your map to look at it. It was a separate action you had to take. Whereas in the 3DS version, it's always there on the bottom screen, which is very nice. The other thing that doesn't sound like a big deal, but after hours and hours of playing, you're like, thank God this is in here, is when you go to the priest. Okay, in many other Dragon Quest games, you have to, if you want to see how much experience it takes to get to the next level, you have to select divination. And then he tells you, and so it's just an extra menu click that you have to do. Whereas when you go to the priest in Dragon Quest VIII on 3DS, when you're talking to him immediately without having to select anything else, it just says on the bottom screen, this is how much experience YANGUS needs. This is how much experience the hero needs.
I like that.
And it's just one little... Like, it's like, they didn't have to do this, and probably nobody would be clamoring for it, but it's a very smart, well-considered change.
Cool, I like it.
So there are a bunch of things that I just haven't gotten to dig into yet.
There's one humongous change, Ben, that scares me.
Okay.
This is the last.
I think I know what you're going to talk about.
This is the last one that freaks me out.
Sure.
2 additional characters.
Yeah, 2 additional characters. Well,
Wait, party members?
Yes.
Party members.
2 additional party members.
Are they people that weren't party members and now are, or are they all new?
No, well, they weren't. But one of the characters you do encounter.
Yes.
Yes.
Both of them in the main game.
Yes, you're right. Yes, it is both of them.
YANGUS is Thieves Guild friend, and the
who's great, by the way.
She's awesome, and the monster Hercule. Forget his name, like Giovanni.
Yeah,
or,
it's got a claw.
Yeah. So
they swap out in battle, or how does?
Yeah, how does that even work? Because it freaks me out. Because that's another reason that I hold Dragon Quest VIII so high, is because recruiting YANGUS and then Jessica and Angelo, and then just being with those core party members. They're my favorite party members in a JRPG. That I feel like it would interfere with the flow of the story and the story as a whole if you're recruiting these other people, because it's such a tight-knit personal group going on this mission for their own reason.
Again, I totally understand the apprehension, and I'm frustrated that I can't speak to their implementation. I just have no idea.
Okay.
But I guess I just have an opposite initial reaction to it, where it's like, oh no, like I could get more context. Like these characters could become more meaningful. They could shed light on new things and just enrich the story even further. So I don't necessarily view it as a potential liability. Like my immediate reaction is, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like
it is cool being able to use the Monster Hunter, but they do have their own arcs.
Right. And it could be when I get there that they don't add anything and it does feel jammed in. Like that is totally possible. Yeah. I just don't know. The other thing that I haven't really gotten to do, there's this Cameron challenge where you go out into the world and you take pictures of certain monsters, of certain areas, and you come back and you are rewarded for taking these pictures with in-game rewards. Like you will get special items for doing this. Awesome. And again, I haven't used it, but on paper, it sounds like such a cool idea. Cool. And I think it's something that more JRPGs need to get better at, where the world is really just a backdrop for fighting and talking to people. I love the idea of, go out there, explore, and do this thing. Here's the incentive to just, be more adventurous and not just focus on battles and getting
Fantasy 12 and 15, the monster hunts.
Yeah, things like that.
Love that stuff.
Where you just feel a closer connection to the world around you. And I think that has the potential to do it here.
Cool.
But yeah,
Did the voice acting make it in?
What's that?
Did the voice acting make it in?
The voice acting not only made it in, but I believe there are additional voice lines that weren't in the PS2 version.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and
I wonder if some of that stuff was written and it'd be hard to get the same actors you would think.
Well, there's
already recorded.
There's another ending that you can get as well.
Wow.
To the game.
Oh, I did hear about that before it came out. Right, it was like an extended. See, this stuff freaks me out. It freaks me out, Ben.
Yeah,
And, like,
I get it.
like Nino Kuni did the
Yeah.
same thing. They, the PS3 version added
Right.
extra stuff, and talking to Damiani about it, it like ruins the context of the original game.
Right, but I think we just need to get our hands on it before we claim one way or another.
Yeah. Cautiously
Cautiously
pessimistic.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Pessimism is good, can be good. But I think the reason why we're laboring over this stuff so much in the first place is just because we love the game so much.
Yeah.
And you were
High
talking about
stakes.
voice acting, and that's kind of the last point I want to bring up here. In mainline Dragon Quest games, not a lot of voice acting. And that's something that immediately separated 8. And I still think the reason why I love the characters of 8 more than most Dragon Quest 8s is because of how well that voice acting was done.
Yeah.
Especially for the core group. They just have such vivid personalities.
Yeah.
And if the delivery wasn't as good as it is in the game, I don't think that attachment would be there in the same way.
I don't want to rag on Final Fantasy X's voice acting, but going
Yes,
back,
you do.
Okay, yes, I do. Going back and playing that HD remaster,
Yeah.
and realizing that it came out like in close proximity to Dragon Quest VIII.
Yeah.
Like a year or two apart, right?
No, more than that.
More than that.
I
It was like
think
04?
Final Fantasy X came out in like 02?
It's like 2 years or so, give or take.
Well, in North America, DQ8 came out in 2005, I believe.
Okay,
So,
2 or 3 years.
yeah, okay, sure. Yeah.
Instead of 1 or 2, 2 or 3. But anyway, it was like going through it. It was almost like I wanted to turn the voice acting off because it was
Even
like,
at the time?
no, when I played the
Right.
10 remaster,
Yeah.
it was almost detracting from the game, making it like age poorly. I was like, this is hurting right now.
Yeah.
Whereas Dragon Quest VIII, that voice acting
Right.
holds up.
Huber, I was going to say the exact same thing, is
holds
when I was
up.
initially going through Final Fantasy X on the PS2, I was like, oh man, this voice acting in Final Fantasy, this is great.
Yeah.
And then years later being
Years
like,
later.
man, this is so stilted and awkward. Whereas revisiting Dragon Quest VIII, I'm like, oh my goodness.
It's perfect.
It's great.
It's so
they did a
good.
great job with the localization, with the delivery.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the ultimate takeaway here is that we all think Dragon Quest VIII is a game worth playing. Like I said, I know there's a lot out there, but if you've got a 3DS, I don't even think it's hyperbole to say that this is one of the best games that you could probably play on that platform
Absolutely.
right now.
Yep.
Are there any other final thoughts that you guys want to say about DQ8?
Well, as we were saying, like 7 is a hard recommendation because it does start off so slow, and it takes such a long time just even to get the first combat encounter.
I have
Whereas-
really complicated thoughts about 7.
Yeah. Whereas 8, it's like you kind of get right in there, and then you
Yeah.
have some fun stuff with the mouse, and it's just like
Yeah.
it just feels like being part of a cartoon adventure.
Right.
It's really
Well said.
really easy to relate to and to get into, I think.
Yeah. That was
Well
good.
said,
That was-
Boris. Yeah, I
well
can't
said.
even add to that. That was just well said.
You're just signing off.
Yeah, I'm signing off. It's
Okay.
Dragon Quest VIII. Really, no better game you could play anywhere right now than Dragon Quest VIII. I'm putting it at the top.
That's going to do it for us.
Voila! Le pouf pouf!
Cool, blimey!